scortazzini per Nedved, Pirlo, la conclusione in rete, Andrea Pirlo, un gol pazzesco! Del Piero, Alex, Del Piero! Sulla palla di Pogacar, Pogba, rete, un gol incredibile, Pogba fa esplodere lo Juventus Stadium!
Welcome all to episode 330 of the Turin Giants podcast. My name is Zach, and I am joined here by Frederic immediately after the Coppa Italia tie against Udinese, where Juventus won comfortably 2-0, making 3 wins in a row. Frederic, that must mean you are happy, right?
I'm very happy. I'm very happy.
Okay,
that's
the worst thing we can hear, Frederic, because when you were happy,
I know
we played like shit. Then you got all depressed again, got all down on everybody, and then of course we win 3 on the bounce. So I actually was kind of hoping you would still be really mad.
I'm not really mad. I'm not mad at all. I just feel that, let's keep our feet on the ground here. It's a Coppa Italia game. We used to snub these games like 4 seasons ago. They were like friendlies. Now all of a sudden it's of grand importance. I don't think we have to, be that definitive in our judgment. But I will say that we saw some bright lights, and we'll get into that. I think in this episode, we'll get into that a lot more deeper.
Absolutely. Before we do that, I want to just go through the quick housekeeping. Y'all who listen to us regularly know the drill. For anybody new, subscribe, like at Turin Giants Official on YouTube, Turin Giants, and Spotify, Apple Podcast, and of course you can check out turingiants.com. In fact, Frederic, not to drop too much of a spoiler or anything, but there's we designed a scoop shirt so that
you designed one in accordance with Dan Colissimo.
Yeah, we worked with Cola 99, and that'll be coming soon, everybody. So we're excited.
We were
about that.
Part of the creative process.
Yeah, we just gave them a lot of opinions, which is kind of what we do here. And that's what we're going to do today, because you say that in the past we forget Coppa Italia, it's not important. But I want to do a brief history moment for you and everybody in the chat, because it was almost a year ago to February 26th, 2025. We were in the quarterfinals of the Coppa. Thiago Motta was our coach, and we got bounced after a 1-1 draw in regular time. We lost 2-4 in penalties to Empoli of all teams, which was one of the biggest first black marks against Motta's leadership, which would ultimately contribute to his sacking. And so, like, for me, when I thought about that moment 10 months ago, I really kind of went into this Coppa games hoping that the team played with a little bit of hunger to or sort of atone to themselves and to us for that horrible and dreadful performance. And I absolutely think they did. Do you, Frederic, or was that game, Empoli game, in your mind at all when as we kind of approached the kickoff?
It's been haunting me ever since. I think to me that was the definitive downfall and the beginning of the end of Juventus last season. And I think you could see or feel that things eventually declined straight after that loss, and you could tell it just by looking at the players at that point, where they lost all hope, all confidence. And for me that was a daunting moment, because you never, when we had it good, you never understood quite the importance of a Coppa Italia game. I mean, we were snubbing it. It wasn't important. But then you face the facts in the negative sense of the word. And then all of a sudden, this pretty much defines your season. And for me, it was very daunting. And it was also very sad, because I never thought that our team could, pull up such a lackluster performance as we did at the time, and it was a symbolic loss, and it resulted in a number of issues that we are now exposing or trying to remedy, which is a good thing. But at the time, I was genuinely heartbroken. Yeah.
Well, I think Spalletti took it as seriously as we wanted him to. We saw from a starting 11 standpoint a pretty strong team. Gatti coming back in might you would be sort of a rotation. The Cabal starting, Coop going back into midfield, but I don't think there's too much from the starting 11 that too much to talk about from a formation and from a personnel standpoint. It's kind of what we'd expect from a stronger side, especially against a heavily rotated Udinese. Would you agree with that, Frederic, or do you think from a starting 11 there's something that jumped out at you as particularly noteworthy?
Well, to me, it was a bit of a surprise. I was expecting John Mario to start, to be honest, because from what I hear from the people within Juventus, he made a very good impression in training sessions this week. So I was kind of hoping for his starting position because there are a lot of rumors popping up about him asking to leave Juventus already in January and things like that. So I was hoping to, and I was relieved when he got some minutes eventually, but I was hoping to see him in the starting lineup, which didn't happen. And I was fairly surprised by the Moretti Coupe pairing, in a sense that I felt wrongly that Coupe maybe wasn't ready to reprise his role in midfield yet. Yet he did, and he did so very well. So kudos to Spalletti and Coop, and I was wrong. So let me be the first to admit it here.
Well, let's talk. I think that's a great place to start because even before we logged in, there was a note in the chat waiting for us about the surprise at how well that midfield pairing did. And I think you would agree. I think we were chatting on the side, texting during the game. That Coop Moretti midfield looked really good. A lot of fantastic movement in sync with each other to help facilitate possession, not only horizontally, but and this was really important for me to see from Coop vertically as well. Is this a sign of, hey, it's a Coppa game against a rotated Udinese team, or did you see the quality with which they played as a positive sign for Serie A or the Champions League?
There was a lot more quality in midfield. The flow was a lot better. I feel the link up between either defense and midfield or midfield and attack was much smoother, much faster, in my opinion. So you could see that you had two technical players in midfield who weren't afraid to, grease up the elbows and get their hands dirty and whatever. So I feel that was a very good pairing. I didn't expect it, to be honest. And I like the confidence which Cope took on himself to perform, because it doesn't matter if you're playing against Udinese or Real Madrid at that point, because it's a mental issue that Cope was suffering from. And to see that pressure alleviated from him due to the couple of good performances he had as a wing back, it felt really, really good to me. And I was thinking maybe I'm reading too much into it, but after the Gatti injury, we got a chance to see what the midfield would look like after, um, the subs, and I stand by my claim that the flow was a lot better with Moretti Coupe pairing up in midfield than it was with when Luca came on,
Well,
which is not
let's
to be
talk about that.
negative about Luca.
Let's talk about that. We saw Locatelli was subbed in for Gatti in the injury. We're going to talk about his injury in just a second in the 55th minute. So we saw a 40 minutes with extra time of the Locatelli Moretti, and we saw the 55 minutes of Coop and Moretti. We just talked about what we liked from Coop Moretti. One of the comments said that with Gatti's injury, maybe we're going to go back to sort of Locatelli midfield, Coop in defense. What was so frustrating to you about Locatelli Moretti combo at the 55, starting in the 55th minute, that made you want the return to what we saw in the first half?
I just felt that there was a lack of vertical play, but instant vertical play. I know we talked about this in previous podcasts because Locatelli does play vertically, but not as directly as a Koopmeiners does. Koop puts more risk into his passing, which often, results in chances or offensive situations, and that helps alleviate pressure from midfield as well as defense. And to me, in that respect, is something that we need as a team, because you see that if our midfield or our defense gets pressed a lot or is under a lot of pressure, then usually a mistake is not far off, because we don't have that super awesome, talented players in those roles that we wish we would have had. So, in my opinion, the more we play riskfully in midfield through passing and speed of play, the more it benefits us as a team. So this is not to hate on Luca, because I saw the chat popping up with hate towards Di Gregorio and whatever. But also, yeah, we did get a clean sheet. I don't know if it's due to Di Gregorio's performance, but we did get one. And I think this is maybe one of the best moments in the game, that we managed to keep a clean sheet, because this will boost a lot of confidence, not amongst just the defenders or the goalkeeper, but the whole team per se. Because having to come back from that, goal down, or that counter attack, or that mistake or whatever, that's something that's going to get over analyzed no matter how you twist and turn it. And to have a game where you don't have to face those consequences will be something worthwhile for the players to close off on. So I think that's a very good point there.
I think it's really easy, and this might just be my opinion, Frederic, but I think it's really easy to keep a clean sheet when the opposing team has no shots on goal. So I think that was a real advantage. Udinese offered very little going forward, and when they did, we were very compact, meaning that Di Gregorio really almost literally had nothing to do this game. I think to kind of close out the midfield discussion, there's two discussion points I want to have. The first is, and it was raised by one of the comments, is with Gatti's injury, and kind of give me your take on the injury based on his body language and stuff first, but then get into this point, is with his injury, and I think Rugani's injured as well, and Bremer's injured.
Yes.
What does our midfield look like? Does this mean Coop is as good as he looked today, is back in the back line guaranteed? Or we'll start with that, the Gatti and the Coop thing, and then I want to talk on secondarily of what does the performance of Moretti just individually, and then Moretti synced with Coop, mean for Terah? So start me with the Gatti and our back line aspect, Frederic. What do you look in your looking glass? What is that going to look like moving forward?
Well, I think the Gatti injury is going to be serious, because of the way that he wasn't able to, keep any stability on that knee. The fact that the injury came without having received a knock or anything also suspects me to believe that it's something that's fairly serious. It won't be a small ligament or whatever. I also heard that his knee immediately swelled up, meaning, in my opinion, having 11 surgeries behind me now, that it's either the ACL or the meniscus. I don't know if the meniscus is the correct English term. Excuse me if it's not. Um, which means that it's serious, in terms of the time being out. In that case, should he be at least 2 months out, which I suspect, I don't hope, but I suspect. I think that Spalletti has no other choice but to go back to the back line, because of the security that he offers, and because that we're in this phase of every competition that we're in now, that we can't really afford to lose any points unnecessarily. Um, so yeah, it's a bit of a let's wait. I mean, if his knee is still swollen up, then I don't think he'll be visiting the hospital for X-rays tomorrow. Could be the day after. And then we'll know more. But even still, I wouldn't count on him to be back, at least not before middle January, even if it's not as serious as we think. So yeah, I'm kind of bummed by that, because our back line's beginning to look very thin at this point. And with the pairing of Moretti and Coop, we had something to look forward to, which will have to be postponed unless we get another center back in January.
Let's go to the Terah aspect, Moretti looked pretty good today. He looked like he had a lot. I've always liked this about his game. He moves into space really well and at the right time, and I think we saw his cohesion with Koopmeiners really complement his play style to facilitate the ball in a positive way. It's still an open question of whether he's become more decisive and incisive in the attacking third, which I'd like to see. But was his performance today? What does that mean? What does that mean for Taram on the depth chart?
It's very clear that Turam kind of fell off lately. I don't know if it's related to an injury because he did come out saying that he, last couple of months he had some issues with injuries and little bits and bobs there. It could also be mentally, but I think if you look at even today, you could see that Spalletti had no intention to bring him in. There was no need to bring him in. You could counter with that, but on the other hand, if you look at the performances that Moretti's putting up, and he keeps doing those and crescendo, then for a coach, it's very hard to bypass that. And I also have the feeling that Moretti and Thuram in midfield don't link up together as well as they should.
Oh, I think those two in the midfield kind of serve a similar purpose. I don't think you would want to play them in the midfield because there's some too similar of characteristics between the two from what I've seen. So we'll definitely follow that moving forward. But I get the similar situation where Taram might be moving slightly down the pecking order, and certainly he hasn't shown too much in his recent performances to warrant or demand a starting role.
No,
Let's move further up the pitch. Obviously, with news of Dushan's prolonged injury, we got to see both Jonathan David and Luis Openda today. When the injury happened, and again, I don't ever want to wish injury on anybody, and certainly feel bad for Dushan as an individual. But I texted y'all that I think it was a blessing in disguise because we brought in these two strikers, and then we never really gave them an honest run of games, always rotating them in or out or playing them awkwardly as late subs. And this will force us to put our money where our mouth is in terms of playing the guys that we brought in. And it's either going to fall flat on his face or it's going to be that blessing in disguise. What did you, and we'll start with Jonathan David since he started the game. What did you make of his performance, his movement in the throughout the pitch, and his presence in the attacking third?
I thought it was a very good display. I thought it was unexpectedly a very good performance of somebody that you can tell just lacks confidence. This is not the case of, not being able to play football, not being able to fit in a certain formation or whatever. This is a player that just misses a lot of confidence. And you can see when his confidence is boosted that he does crazy things like the second goal that was disallowed. This is something that, is not something that you plan to do. This is something that happens out of instinct, out of reflex, which you only do or only try if you're good enough and you're pretty much high on adrenaline and performance. And that is what he did. There's still a lot of work to be done. I'm not going to lie. A lot of work to be done on David. He's still very rough around the edges, especially in terms of velocity. I find him a bit slow at times. I thought he was faster. Maybe that's just a misinterpretation that I got from his time out in France. But I think he's a bit more slower, and all the aspects that we covered in our Scoop episode back then when we were reviewing them all seem to be true. Now the only thing that we need to figure out, or Spalletti needs to figure out, is that how can we make sure that we offer him a decent amount of goal scoring opportunities and make sure that he's a central pivot in our playing style offensively, because that is also what he needs as a player. But I think it was a very good performance. I think we have to leave it at that. But of course, the bigger games will be his testing ground. You have to make a difference against other teams as well.
Yeah.
But he's on the right track, and let's not get into that. But Udinese is a B side, and they didn't play very well. It's all true, but you still have to be there. You still have to, put in the work, and you still have to be able to leave the past behind you. That's very difficult as a new striker in a new country, in a new team with a new language. And he's not been here so long. I mean, it's since August. It's very difficult to acclimate. What's the word I'm looking for?
Acclimate.
Acclimate.
Hmm.
Acclimate
The
in a
Yeah.
foreign country.
But I think, but when you and I agree with you up until this game, up until this game, like this game, his movement though, his passing, certainly that shot on the second goal was just so audacious, right? It really today he seemed somewhat liberated. In the
Yeah.
past, he seemed hesitant or nervous or uncertain, and I didn't really see that much today. We've said it before with him. He needs to be a little bit more selfish in the box. There were a couple times where we were just playing, passing around for no reason in the box, and
Yeah.
he's a part of that. But at the same time, on the second goal that wasn't a goal, again, drifted off the back of the defender, found the space, slotted in a really tight angle. It really is the mark of a confident, informed striker. Now, it needs to be said that the offside line was drawn from the wrong defender. That does not mean, at least from what I've seen, it doesn't mean he should have been or was onside. It was just absolutely embarrassing, though, that the line was drawn from the wrong defender. So maybe it was a goal of his that was taken away. But I saw this, forgetting the opposite level of the opposition, as a huge step in the right direction from a confidence standpoint for Jonathan David. Let's move to Openda, because we got a cameo appearance, about 20 minutes, including extra time from Openda. That also included a goal that wasn't a goal. John Mario's big toe was slightly too big. But what did you see from him? I also saw a little bit more pizzazz or confidence from his movement and his play as well.
Agreed. It wasn't up to par with David's performance, I think, but it's a bit unfair to compare them because David had, a lot more playing time than Openda did. But you could see that Openda is also the player that feeds off this energy vibe.
Hmm.
So it's imperative for him to, start a game or come in with a game with a good vibe. And I was very happy that he scored, albeit that, his finishing was poor at the goal. Was like a shot in the middle, which was more keeper's error than it was, thanks to him, his effort that resulted in the goal. But I was very happy because I thought that would be a huge confidence boost for him. But he did very well. The only thing I'm missing with Openda at this point, and it's the same gripe I had with him in the other games, is that often he loses focus and he then just takes whatever choice, and 9 times out of 10 it's the wrong choice. And these are like the simple details, like how you feed a pass into the pathway of another player. Like there was I think with Cambiasso when he fed a ball into the box,
Hmm.
and it was just on the side of Cambiasso's wrong leg, to be so forcing the attack to a halt. And it's these little details that you can only get by getting minutes. So I think if he gets minutes, and he'll get a lot more of them given Vlahovic's injury, he'll grow into that. He'll learn from that, and he'll be better. And so I think, in my opinion, that there's a lot of room for growth. But the most difficult thing will be now for Spalletti and how to manage it. Because today there were no expectations. Let's be honest. We'd assume that we could beat the Udinese side even with a weaker team
You
on
can't, no,
paper.
you can't say that. This team, this Juventus team, has done very little in the last year and a half to deserve the benefit of the doubt. You have to
No,
go into these
no,
games and you got to win
maybe
these
I'm,
games.
no,
I mean,
yeah,
our
but
last
that's what I
Coppa game was
mean.
the loss against Empoli. That's what we started at the top of the show. I mean, there's you can't take anything for granted.
No, no, no. I'm not. I'm not just talking about the win. I'm talking about the performance as a whole. I think everybody was in agreement that Juventus woulda, shoulda, coulda beat this Udinese side, but we didn't have you know, these expectations of champagne football and high pressure, like 90 minutes, or a hat trick from David or whatnot. I think most people would have been happy with a scrappy 1-0 win today. And I'm one of those people as well. So we shouldn't expect this whole thing to turn about in just one game. However, come the next games, which we'll talk about later, you'll have to start putting performances in because we're in at a point that we can't spare to lose any more points in neither competition. So I think, this is a knockout game. This is a bit different from what we're used to. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen at the Stadio Maradona. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen. Not just the result, but how the team manifests itself in terms of mentality and hunger.
We'll talk about the upcoming games at the end of the show. I will say, I think if my memory serves me correct, our last Copa hat trick was scored by Milik against Frosinone, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Juventus legend Arik Milik. Of course, we all remember him from all the goals he scores for us. That hat trick. What was it, like 2 years ago or something like that? A year and a half. But yeah, don't get hat tricks too often. So again, Frederic, you can't take anything for granted in these games.
No, 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 that's true.
Let's talk about. I think the last player I wanted to highlight before we got to all of our players of the match is Weston McKennie. Weston McKennie is a player earlier on in the season I criticized because we know he puts in the work, but his touch has oftentimes let him down, and he's offset that in his history at Juventus by contributing to goals and assists, which of course hadn't happened much since his goal a couple games ago. I've seen a lot better vision in his passing, a lot better movement. And I saw not only a fantastic performance today, but that also marks his 200th appearance in the black and white, which as an American is almost unfathomable. Certainly, if you asked me before he signed, would it be possible? I'd say probably never in my lifetime. So that was kind of cool. What do you make of McKennie, his recent form, and his contribution on this team, sort of reflecting on his 200 games?
Well, I think you have to look at the coaches he played under because his impact was vastly different under all these coaches. And I think McKennie has finally found a coach who not only believes in him, because I feel that a number of coaches did believe in McKennie, but they didn't utilize him the way they could have. And it's very clear to me that now Spalletti keeps, having faith in McKennie, but also tries to make McKennie even better, not just by putting him in a different position or thinking, oh, here's a gap, let me put McKennie there because he's, so omnipotent on the pitch. No, he does that by communicating with him, by telling him where he should have made another choice, by telling him what's the best thing to do in a situation. Like he pulled him to the sidelines, I think 2 or 3 times this game, just to communicate to him and tell him, look, if you play that, I'm not sure what they said, but I'm just giving an example. And this is for McKennie very, very, very critical because he's a player that remembers a lot of things and tries his best to improve on that. And if you have a coach that stands directly next to you and tells you what to do, when to do, or what you could have done, I think that you could see it in his performances. He's somebody that keeps putting performances in and crescendo, and maybe he's lacking a bit in terms of scoring and delivering assets and whatever, but he's of vital importance. And you could tell with that two-man pair up of Moretti and Cope that he was the cement holding the midfield together. While Moretti and Cope had more liberty, to play those risky vertical passes or to run into space because they knew that McKennie would be there if there was ever a serious amount of space opening up to fill that gap in. So, hats off to Spalletti. He's making a lot of players better than they were or than they performed. And I have to agree with Mitch in the chat. For me, Wes is not a Juventus starter. I think if you have budget, you can find midfielders that are qualitatively better than him. But he's one who always gives his all on the pitch and tries to improve and does that so wholesomely and from a very down to earth kind of, aspect that you have to admire him for that. And I have nothing but respect and admiration for McKennie, and I hope he continues this trend because if he can keep being the cement of our midfield, regardless of who plays alongside him. I think, we can be a force to be reckoned with, especially for the teams that we're playing against.
Like, for me, the most telling thing about McKennie is how every single coach at some way or some phase, whether it was a coach or the management of Juventus, wanted him gone. In fact, at one time loaning him out. And every single time he comes back and he makes himself indispensable. Whether you look at him and you say he's limited because his touch isn't that great, or he's not producing as many goals, it's not in dispute that every single coach he's had has found him valuable due to his versatility and the contribution and work rate he presents on the pitch. And I think ultimately we're at a phase where we don't have the quality of players that maybe many of us had become accustomed or at least longed for. But I don't see a world where you can look at a guy who tries 150% every time he's on the pitch and not respect and appreciate that level of contribution, that grinta for the badge. And for that, if Weston McKennie leaves on a free at the end of the season, I will still think of his tenure positively and with a lot of pride as an American for what he did and what he tried to do for our team. So I think it was kind of a cool moment, a good game from him to mark his 200th appearance,
Absolutely.
and a word of appreciation for Weston McKennie. Now I'm going to put you on
Yeah.
the spot. I'm going to put you on the spot. Alrighty, you ready for this? We have celebrated.
I'm not.
Okay, you're not ready because you have no idea.
Go ahead.
You have no idea what I'm going to say.
I have no idea.
We haven't really celebrated. I was about to say we've celebrated milestones. We haven't. There have been 4 milestones that I'm aware of, at least, for Juventus recently. Okay, today was McKennie's 200th appearance. Last game was Locatelli's 200th appearance, and 2 games before that was both Yildiz's and Cambiasso's 100th appearance for Juventus. So 4 milestones that I can think of. I might have missed somebody. Please, chat, correct me if I'm wrong. But out of those 4 players, which one do you think is marked the most important, or has been the most important to this version of Juventus during their tenure?
So I'm choosing McKennie, Loca, Yildiz, Cambiasso.
Yes.
I'd have to go with McKennie.
Well, we knew you weren't going to pick Loca, but or Cambiasso, because I know your feelings about him. But why McKennie over Yildiz?
Because I think that the impact that Yildiz has had, a very good one, was commencing during Tudor era. I think he was given the confidence by Tudor and took advantage of that, and in a fantastic manner. But if you look at how decisive McKennie has been in those 200 games, and you compare it to the tenure that Kenan has had, I think McKennie's been more decisive. Let's not also forget the adversity McKennie had to struggle against. He was basically thrown out of the team, came back with a vengeance, supported a team that was, punished on all sides, points deducted, I don't know, whatever thing happened. You had at the time a whole board of directors that, just resigned, and everything was uncertain, insecure. You had players leaving. You had the whole Juntoli era where he went, with his notepad kicking random players out. It was a hectic time, and McKennie, after all these storms, he's still standing there. So to me, that's for me, he gains respect with that, and it shows me that it's somebody, who actually likes Juventus, because I know for a fact that McKennie had offers, especially wage-wise. He could have improved. He chose not to, and he always tried to, defend his turf and stand his own, and fight for a chance to be in the starting lineup. With Yildiz, it's a bit more easier. Jesus, that's somebody else. Yildiz has that natural born talent, and it's hard to get past that, because if you see what he can do with a ball, and you have a lack of creativity up front, or the link up between midfield and the forwards, then Yildiz is somebody everybody would pick. That's the player you buy a ticket for to go see a soccer or football game. McKennie is that guy that does all the pulling, does all the work, year in year out, come whatever may, and he's still there, and I like that. He's a bit of the underdog. He's basically Juventus in human form. You always think of him as the pushover and the guy that you'll get out of the squad, but he keeps coming back and he keeps improving or trying to improve, and I think that's commemorable.
Same list of four. Who hasn't done enough to show you that they belong?
I can pick only one.
Okay.
Cambiasso. I don't know if it needs any further explanation, but Cambiasso, I feel, is the talented boy who never got to be a man. He never
Yeah.
develops. Yeah.
Cambiasso, what was it? It was January of last year, or January this year, 11 months ago, when he had that City offer and a little bit of a knock. And I mean, he was just playing lights out under Motta's Juventus. And we saw what he could be and what he could do. And, we were talking about Terah earlier, seeing his run until the end of the season. I think both of those, and I know we're not talking about Terah Milestone, but both Cambiasso and Terah have showed us the heights that they can reach, and they just haven't been doing it recently. And so I have to agree with you that Cambiasso can do so much more, and he just isn't showing it right now. He's got to find that moment of form. Do you think with him, I mean, you talked about Coop earlier, struggling with the mental side of it, and sort of, I think what we're seeing him is emerge somewhat from that mental cave that he was in. Is Cambiasso a situation where he just had ungodly form for a short period of time, and this is, in what we're seeing, is really just what Cambiasso is, or is it a mental thing, do you think, with him as well?
I have to choose my words very carefully. Cambiasso is a player that is heavily influenced by his own mind. And I know this for a fact, and my sources trust me, bro, but you're really gonna have to trust me on this. When that City offer came in, he completely changed, not only as a football player, but also as a person. And I think that, Cambiasso's personality as Cambiasso, the human being, and Cambiasso, the football player, are so heavily interlinked that, it just creates a bad vibe on and off the pitch for some reason. And I'm not saying Cambiasso was a terrible football player. I'm not saying Cambiasso was the worst person, on this planet or whatever. I just think that the City offer had him shook, had him expecting or believing things that may or may not were realistic. And he still has that little notch on his bedpost, like the missed opportunity, what could have been. And I think he feels that playing for Juventus now, I'm not going to say is beneath him, but is something that, is fine for the moment being. And I'm not sure if Cambiasso is the same player if he doesn't have that spark of extra motivation, that extra spark of, or that extra bit of fire in him. If you take that away from him, then he's the Cambiasso we see now. And I think for me, a fairly good player, but nothing, or not a player that you buy your tickets for, not the player that you hope will explode and or you're counting on to explode or become the next hot thing in your team. He for me he's mentally very, very fragile.
Hmm.
And I think that takes a lot away from his performances as well.
Well, we are still we'll end this and say we are marking the milestones of those four players. 102 games now for Yildiz and Cambiasso, 201 for Locatelli, and 200 today for McKennie. I think this perfectly segues into the segment that we do in every post-game episode. Let me see if I can find the drop. We know Farhad loves it.
I have a very big testicles.
the big balls player of the match. Frederic, I will let you go first. Who is it for you?
For me today, it's been Koopmeiners. Why has it been Koopmeiners? Because we deservedly congratulated him on his past efforts as a wingback, but today he did both jobs. He did, the reintroduction to the midfield, which can be very daunting because for him it was a very dark period as well with those performances that he had. Now we got the chance to, be there, start afresh. He took that opportunity, and not only that, when he was forced to, play, another line back due to injuries or whatever, he just switched off or on as if it were nothing. And if you can, take two roles in a team in the same game without, being or with being very dominant in that role, then you're either a world-class talented player or you're very strong mentally or you're both. And I think Cope has a bit of both. We just need to get the 100% of that bit out of him and we're gonna have fun. But that's my
For
opinion.
more than a year, we talked about how Koopmeiners looked completely lost on the pitch. His movement was erratic and not useful. His passing was negative, if not errant. And I think it's fair to say, and correct me if you disagree, that the Koopmeiners we saw at Atalanta, that Koopmeiners is gone, is completely gone. But we're seeing a new Coop emerge. Whatever the Juventus Coop is, it will be. I think we're starting to see that individual and that quality emerge because to follow what you said, there was absolutely no doubt in my mind by looking at his demeanor and what he did on the pitch as he transferred roles and as he performed in both roles, that there was going to be an issue come through him. And that is that level of confidence that we talked about when we were discussing Jonathan David, that certain players just exude when they're in the zone. And he is finding that zone finally. And so I'm definitely excited to see what that's going to look like over the course of the season, especially when we get some defenders back to see how he mixes into the midfield at that point. So, Koopmeiners, let me go back to my drop. We have a quota. If I don't meet my quota, Farhad sends me nasty text messages.
Do we have to pay royalties?
Exactly.
We don't have to pay royalties.
No, it's penalties. It's a penalty to Farhad if we don't meet the quota.
Okay.
So, Koopmeiners.
He have a very big testicles.
It's hard for me. I've been sort of struggling this whole time as I was thinking about who to talk about. I think Moretti finally showed a really good performance on the pitch. Too often we ignore Pierre Kalulu in defense. He's just been so steady and reliable for much of the season. I feel like, maybe we overlook him unfairly. We talked about Jonathan David exuding a level of confidence. A 21 for 21 in passing situations, questionable, no goal on that second strike, questionable own goal on the first one. But I'm going to go with McKennie in the spirit of our milestone conversation. He had a fantastic, well-rounded performance. It was his dangerous cross, by the way, that came from a lovely ball from Koopmeiners. Sidestepping the defender, cutting through the mix, and then sprinting to get that ball. It was that dangerous, perfect cross that he put in that caused the own goal. He led our team in defensive actions. Mr. Limited passing range was 3 for 3 on deep passes, on long passes, I should say. And I think a well-rounded performance from him. So Weston, McKennie celebrating 200 appearances.
Yeah.
He have a very big testicles.
Then again,
Can't fault you there.
No. And it's rare. It's rare that we can say, if somebody said Kalulu, if somebody, we wanted to say David, if
even Kelly. I mean,
Kelly,
I'm not
Kelly too. You could have said
all
any of
season.
them. You could have said any of them this game, and it would have been fair in my opinion. Yeah, go ahead.
May I remark something? Because we've seen a lot of showings of Kelly lately, and
Mhm.
deservedly so. We gave him his accolades during our podcast. But what I saw today was something very, very new to me. That was Kelly in various situations, um, pointing and basically, you know, giving directions, giving advice, maybe even, reprimanding someone. He's really turning into a leader. And he was a leader in the terms of performance, in my opinion, but now he's really blending in with the squad and really taking that role upon him to be the pillar that we had in Bremer, because he wasn't very communicative, but he was somebody with body language who could you could basically put anyone beside him and he have a good game. He's doing the same, and I feel that deserves also some mentioning, because we were the first to cast a stone on Kelly and his transfer and whatever, and rightfully so, because his first season was awful, or the part that he played that first season. But now, if you see a player, coming from that far back, being down bad in all shapes and ways that you can think of, and now, naturally becoming a leader of your defensive line and maybe perhaps also of your team. I mean, to me, that speaks volumes. So, we applaud a lot of players, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to applaud Kelly, because I think you and I predicted it, that this was going to be the comeback of the season, and my man didn't disappoint thus far. So, yeah.
Two things on this. So first is when since Coop was moved back to defense, Kevin's been to games in the stadium and so forth, and so we've witnessed how vocal he was in the defense. Coop, that is, to structure folks and to coordinate with folks. Well, Coop was in the midfield today. Someone else had to step into that role, and seeing Kelly grow into that. And you only really do that when you feel that you have the confidence to do so, and you have the ears
Yep.
of the players around you. And I think that's it, really indicative of him stepping up. And then the second thing I want to talk about, and chat, I challenge you to disagree with me. Please put it in the chat if you do. But when I look at, again, a back line, and this is crazy to say, certainly if 6 months ago I was saying this, I'd be calling myself crazy. But when I think of Kalulu, Kelly in the middle, and then Koopmeiners as the left center back, I'm like, I'm actually really comfortable with that. That is the least area of concern. They've all been very steady and reliable. I have almost confidence in them, which again is crazy to say considering the personnel we're talking about and considering their history. But you have to call a spade a spade. They've been extremely organized and extremely reliable. And as crazy it might be, again, looking at previous form, if it's working, we roll with it. And so, as much as I don't want Gatti to be injured and I want some flexibility with formations, where I look at that back line of Kalulu, again, maybe not getting as much praise as he deserves, especially with that weird wingback situation that he started with the season with, sliding back again in the right center back position. Kelly, as you just said, comeback player of the year for both of us. And then Koopmeiners marshaling the defense from that left center back spot. It's been extremely impressive individually for all three of those gentlemen, all coming from really hard positions. Kalulu being played out of position, Coop played out of commission, Kelly being hated by the entire fan base. And then it gives credit to the coach, Spalletti, for giving them the floor with which to shine and the confidence in the organization with which to shine. So I think thinking about that back line and all three of them, which is, you could have said player of the match for all three, it's as strange as the names might be, thinking of history, I think it's a really positive thing for our team moving forward.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that also, I mean, because we tend to talk a lot about the players, and I was, a couple of episodes ago, I was saying that I was a bit, let down by Spalletti. But if you look at the grander scheme of things, and considering the amount of time he had with our boys, because we had two international breaks as well, we had a lot of injuries, we had a lot of downtime in between. I think Spalletti is doing, man management wise, a very good job, because he's reinvigorating kind of players, the kind of players that we gave hope of. We didn't have any hope left for them. I mean, if you were to tell me a year ago that Koopmeiners would be resurrected as a very good wing back, I would have, fell off my chair laughing. But now it's a reality. That's due to Spalletti. The same goes for Wes. A number of things can be said for other players as well. And Moretti seems like a different player as the player that I knew or saw a year and a half ago. So,
The
I
job's not
mean,
done though. The job's not done.
it's far from done. It's far
Cambiasso and
from done.
Terah. He's got to exorcise whatever demons are plaguing those two gentlemen. And now with Dusan out, aforementioned potential blessing in disguise speech, he needs to ensure that David and Openda are put in a position to be successful and that have the confidence to take advantage of that. All of that is being said because as we move beyond what was let's be real, a very comfortable 2-0, could have been
Friendly
4-0
game.
Against a easier Udinese side. We have a lot of big games coming up. We'll close the book on this one simply to say that the next Copa game will be in February. It'll be February 4th, 2026, and we will play the winner of the Atalanta Genoa game that is taking place tomorrow. So obviously we'll know that result and have plenty of time to prepare. More importantly, we have a game on Sunday against Napoli in Naples, a huge game because despite all of the shenanigans that have happened with Juventus this year, we find ourselves only 5 points back from first place, which is being jointly held by Milan and Napoli themselves. This also marks the return to the Diego Maradona of Luciano Spalletti. It's a huge game for the team. It's a huge game for him personally. And we know it's a huge game for them to beat their former coach and also beat Juventus, which they love to do. Frederic, what's your confidence level looking at Sunday's match?
I'm pretty confident.
Why?
Because
You're pretty confident. Your positivity. We said at the start of the show.
no, I'm not positive.
When you're happy,
I'm confident.
we lose.
I'm
When
not.
you're mad, we win. So I'm giving you the
No.
opportunity to tactfully decide how you approach this game, knowing you might jinx us.
No, we're gonna lose 5-0. No, we're not. I don't know what the outcome's gonna be, but I'm pretty positive in the sense that all the pressure lies with Napoli. They've been going up and down the first couple of 4 spots like all season. You had the whole De Laurentiis Conte battle, which may or not may be true. We don't know. You had the injuries, the awful injuries, not only of Lukaku, De Bruyne, and now you have Anguissa. You have Conte running around like a ticking time bomb. So, the tension there is high. It's not that, and I know a couple of Napoli supporters well embedded within the whole Napoli community, whereas other years they were fairly confident because they obviously had the better side in terms of team. Now they're not so sure because this Juventus is a very strange Juventus. This is a Juventus that can lose from any team randomly, but could also beat any team randomly. So for them, it's a bit of a jump in the dark and not knowing what to expect. And should they lose, then they see themselves plummet like 2 or 3 places at once. And they don't have the mental ability to keep, reclimbing the ladder every time again. Because like we predicted, for me, Napoli is a ticking time bomb with Conte at the helm, and it's gonna explode sooner or later. It's gonna explode, no matter even if they win the Scudetto again. This will result in a bloodbath, and you can mark my words. And the tension is at that point at an all-time high at Naples that it could be crippling to them and liberating to us. And if we should win, and this is a big if, but if we should win,
you already
then
know. You already know it's gonna go mad.
comeback season.
Conte
season.
is going to throw everyone under the bus in the press conference. There's going to be
Yeah.
an absolute rebellion in the players. De Laurentiis is going to come out and say a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
Obviously, winning this game is important for our season. Being within striking distance of first place is almost unfathomable when we've talked about the challenges we've faced. Whether your goal is top 4 or, in my opinion, as it should always be, top 1, winning this game would be a huge statement. And I think it would be extra fun as a fan to see the absolute shit show that would happen in Naples afterwards. So that's why
you also, you're rooting for, even as a neutral supporter, I think you're rooting for Spalletti a bit, because Spalletti, if you compare him to Conte, he's on a different level character-wise. And I think if you can, if he gets this return, and he'll probably get a lot of hate from the crowd as well, because he didn't leave on good terms neither. But, if he can get like that sort of revenge there in an unexpected manner, and as somebody always cheering for the underdog, I'd imagine you'd love the underdog, in the form of Spalletti, to get his wrath at the Maradona.
I don't know if he's an underdog or we're an underdog per se, though that might be a narrative somebody pushes. I think that I just go to say, regardless of what underdog or not, Spalletti probably wants to win this match more than anybody else on either side. I think that's natural, right? That's natural. Conte's been gone from Juventus forever, so there's not that. This is his first time back. I think he's going to be fired up as much as what a 66-year-old man can be. I think he will be fired up, and I'm really excited to see that. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, we will be with you. I won't be, but the Turin Giants team will be with you immediately after for our post-game reactions after Sunday.
And I might be wrong, but I feel Spalletti's gonna pull a surprise in the starting lineup. I don't know why I have that idea. He's gonna pull something very different out of his hat that'll surprise not only us but also Conte and the whole of Napoli. I really have that gut feeling.
Well, Mitch is calling for Zagrova, Jack.
Did you see him?
A good member of our team says Napoli and Naples, easy peasy. What were you gonna say, Frederic?
I just wanted to say, did you see how Zagrova embarrassed half of Udine with one action?
Yeah. The thing, wait, let's actually pause on him for just a second, because we have not seen a lot of Eden Zagrova this year, and you have told us in the past about the sort of the lingering nature of his injury. Where do we stand on that? Is he considered better, or is it still just a process of managing it, which is where we left off last time you gave us an update?
It's still managing, but we're monitoring a lot closer, because we don't want Zagrova to worsen in terms of injury. So this is a very particular injury that you need to pay close attention to, that needs to be monitored daily, and we treat it accordingly. Because I know for a fact that if we would have a fit Zagrova at this point, and he would be cleared by the medical staff, I think that Spalletti would even let him mow his lawn, let alone miss a game. He'd put Zagrova like everywhere. He'd put Zagrova in his backpack and take him out shopping, whatever. Zagrova would be everywhere, because this is the player next to Keenan Yildiz that Spalletti thinks has the most talent, intrinsic talent of the whole squad. So this is somebody that he's banking on. But his injury needs to be monitored, and we don't want to regress back into that situation where we hastily bring a player on because we need him, and then as a result are not able to depend on him for a season or maybe more, because the thing that Zagrova has could be career threatening if not treated properly.
And we already saw what happened with Bremer when we rushed him back. I mean, starting all those games in a row, coming back from that injury, and where do we stand on him? And his future. It's a giant question mark. Regardless, super exciting game. The return to Naples for Spalletti is an enormous storyline. 5 points back from first is also something I'm keeping an eye on and really excited. Just real briefly, a few days after that, on Wednesday, we are back in the Champions League, home against Paphos, an absolute must-win game. We're sitting the 22nd, so 2 spots above or within the qualification table. There are 3 matches to go. Paphos, Monaco, Benfica. All 3 teams are behind us or even with us on points. They are desperate, as we are, to earn some points. And so these are going to be hard-fought games against quote-unquote lesser opposition. And it's one of those situations that within the league, with Napoli, Roma, Bologna coming up, overlooking Paphos could bite us in the butt, couldn't it?
This is the game that I fear most because I've seen Paphos play. Admittedly, I saw highlights, but this is not a team that you can just go and, put 5 in the back of the net. This is not a team that lets you do that. It's man or ball or both, but it's not. You're not going to come here and belittle us because we're a small club from Cyprus. We're going to go throw down the gauntlet. And these are the games that Juve struggles with mostly because they have no response into that very physical, high pressure way of playing that a lot of these smaller clubs now apply. So it'll be interesting to see if Spalletti does his homework. But I think if we can beat Paphos, and with the other results of the other teams are going a bit our way, we could potentially also reach our end point in the group phase there. And we could be mathematically qualified, I think. Well, not mathematically, but you could take a huge step into the right direction and maybe only needing to have a draw to achieve that. So these coming games are they're gonna mark our season in a negative sense or a positive one, but they're gonna leave a mark. So let's hope for the best. And with that in hindsight, I think our showing today was promising and then made me feel a bit more comfortable about taking these games on because they are very, very, very determinating for our season.
I think that's a fair point to end on today. Is the month of December starts with in the league, Napoli, Roma, Bologna. It's got our Coppa game that we got past, and it's got Paphos, which is, like you said, a big step in the right direction or the wrong direction in terms of making the next round of the Champions League. December will be huge for what Juventus will look like across our 3 competitions. We will be there through it all to keep you posted, give you our reactions and our takes. And Frederic and I are going to mix in some scoop content as we near the winter window of January. So stay tuned. Please, if you do not follow us on Instagram, that's where most of our content and updates and so forth are shared. That's Turin Giants. And otherwise, like or subscribe our content to stay abreast of our updates. Everyone who listened and interacted with us in the chat, Frederic, thank you all. As always, until we speak again, Forza Juve.
Conclusione rete! Andrea Pirlo! Un gol pazzesco! Del Piero! Alex! Del Piero! Palla di Pogba, Pogba! Rete! Un gol incredibile! Pogba fa esplodere